because almost 25,000 pupils have been forced out of independent schools since Labour came to power, far higher than the government had predicted.
Well, surprise, surprise. A new report suggests that the Prime Minister's plan to charge VAT on school fees is already driving families away, piling pressure onto the state sector.
Well, critics say that the government's education tax is backfiring, costing the public purse more than it actually raises.
Right, well, joining us now is policy analyst at the Taxpayers Alliance, Shimeon Lee. Shimeon, I think this is totally predictable. They can't control the variable of how many people will leave, therefore they don't really know how much they're going to recoup. To me, it was the most nonsense tax ever. But was this expected?
Well, I think you're right that it's common sense that when you tax something, you get less of it. And when parents are facing up to 20%, even more increase in the fees that they have, many of them will have to make the difficult choice to pull their kids out of private school. And I think that one thing that we have to remember here is that this tax actually hits average earners the hardest, because these are people who have been saving, years in some cases in order to afford their child's education. And now this new tax has just totally upended all of this. And I think the worst part of this tax is that it's a lose-lose for everyone involved. The parents will not get to send their children to the school that they want. The state sector, in fact, has to absorb all these students coming in from the private sector. And of course, when these students leave the private sector, they won't be paying VAT on their school fees. So I think the government's own estimates, which some people have said are actually a conservative estimate, show that 54,000 students will be leaving the private sector for the state sector. And that's just as I said, some people are saying that that's just an underestimate. That's lost revenue and additional burden for the state sector to cope with.
It seems so extraordinary that this is clearly a sort of class war policy designed to whack the rich. But the rich don't mind. Because it's not the rich that are going to be affected.
No, of course
it's the people who are just about clinging on to their independent school that are going to be affected, that are falling off and then piling on pressure in the state sector. I wonder, Shimeon, does any other European country actually tax education in the way that Britain will now?
Well, I think, in fact, Greece tried a version of this by imposing VAT on private schools back in 2015 during their version of austerity. And, of course, that backfired almost immediately. They had to U-turn within a year of that policy coming out. And I think that could very well happen in this country as well, when we finally see the cost that this policy will have on our state school sector. And, of course, whether or not the government could have anticipated this, I think, is more down to the ideological hostility, the whole idea of private education and things like private healthcare, which we've already seen calls to extend VAT to private healthcare as well. So I think it's a big issue, and I think the government has to answer for this.
Well, also, they're supposed to raise 1.6 billion, which is a piddly amount, and they also implemented it in January, which meant the parents would then keep their kids in school till the end of the year, because they wanted to maximise revenue. How much will that bite in, this 25,000 now, to the current estimate of how much they'll recoup?
So I think economists have said that if private school numbers fall by about 13%, that will wipe out all the savings from this tax rise. And in places like Scotland, we've actually seen the latest statistics that show it's already about a 10% decrease in private school numbers in Scotland, and that's getting dangerously close to 13%. So I think a lot more parents will be looking at the state sector very soon. And of course, the state sector itself is not in the best shape. There's a lot of issues with it in terms of transparency. Parents don't really know which schools are good schools and which schools are less than good schools. And of course, we at the Taxpayers Alliance recently released a dashboard, a tool that allows parents to take a look at the grades of the schools in their local authority area. We can find that at schoolsdata.uk.
We have to leave it there, but thank you for your thoughts. It's a total mess, as we all anticipated. Thank you.